Good morning, everyone. I am Carolyn Yeager, a member of the Board of Trustees, and I am delighted to welcome you to today's service. We gather in a caring community to support one another as we search for meaning and purpose, working together to bring justice, equity, and responsible stewardship to the world we share. An especially warm welcome to anyone visiting today. You are always welcome here. I have a few announcements. Again this year, we will have a sock drive to benefit the Norristown Hospitality Center that serves homeless men and women. Please start collecting new socks and hats and gloves and unopened travel-size toiletries that you can bring to our drive-by donation site at the church front entrance on Saturday, November 28th. For those of you who will be away for Thanksgiving, alternative donation times will be announced. Secondly, do not miss MLUC's fantastic auction, Here Comes the Sun. Brought to you by Zoom, of course, and a wonderful team of volunteers and donors. Go to mluc.org to read all about it. Browse the catalog. I was blown away by more than 100 terrific items, including things like these: vacation homes in New Jersey, Maine, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Cape Cod, and Colorado. Scrumptious desserts, homemade lasagna, and soups delivered to your door. A night out for dinner or a ball game. Something new to look at on those walls you see every day. Help with your technical devices or with those weeds in your garden, and much, much more. Just what we need after all these months of deprivation. You can purchase a $15 bidding number through the auction site. Silent auction bidding began yesterday and will begin to close at 4 p.m. next Saturday, November 14th. The live auction begins at 6 p.m. next Saturday. Don't miss it. And now, let's join together to confirm our goal as a congregation. Together, we transform lives through love, service, and our welcoming faith. Today's prelude is the Adagio from Sonata Number 1 by Johann Sebastian Bach, performed by violinist Dominic Salerni.
Good morning. My name is Dawn Star Saras Borchelt, and I'm your Director of Lifespan Faith Development. Our chalice lighters this morning are members of our 6th and 7th grade class. Their class, called Crossing Paths, is learning about the world's religions as a way to help build and clarify their own Unitarian Universalist religious identities. The words they're speaking are Your Broken Heart by Reverend Angela Herrera.
Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life.
Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards and the world needs vision.
Bring them with you, and your joy and your passion.
Bring your loving and your courage and your conviction.
Bring your need for healing and your powers to heal.
There is work to do, and you have all that you need to do it right here in this place.
Didn't work. Did not. I'm trying not to laugh because it's kind of funny.
Now, please join in singing our opening hymn, number 126, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. The words will be on your screen.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfection fills our hearts with joy and love, teach us ever to be faithful. May we still thy goodness prove. Come thou fount of every vision, lift our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of war fall silent, feel our love glow like the sun. When we all serve one another, then our heaven is begun. Come thou fount of inspiration, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the promise of this day. Help us bind ourselves in union, help our hands tell of our love. With thine aid, O fount of justice, earth be fair as heaven above.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Jones, and I want to invite all of our children to gather around our computer screen for this morning's children's story entitled Click Clack Moo, Cows That Type by Doreen Cronin. Cows that type. Now this should be interesting. Farmer Brown has a problem. His cows like to type. All day long he hears click clack moo, click clack moo, click clack moo. Look at his face. You can tell he is really irritated. At first he couldn't believe his ears. Cows that type? Impossible. Click clack moo, click clack moo, clickety clack moo. They're still at it. Then he couldn't believe his eyes. He sees this note. Dear Farmer Brown, the barn is very cold at night. We'd like some electric blankets. Sincerely, the cows. So now we see what the cows have been up to. They've been typing out this note for Farmer Brown. It was bad enough that the cows had found the old typewriter in the barn, but now they wanted electric blankets. "No way," said Farmer Brown. "No electric blankets." So the cows went on strike. They left a note on the barn door. "Sorry, we're closed. No milk today." "No milk today," cried Farmer Brown. In the background, he heard the cows busy at work. Clickety-clack, moo. Clickety-clack, moo. Clickety-clack, moo. The next day, he got another note. "Dear Farmer Brown, the hens are cold too, and they'd like electric blankets. Sincerely, the cows." Now the hens are getting in on it. The cows were growing impatient with the farmer. They left a new note on the barn door. "Closed, no milk, no eggs." "No eggs," cried Farmer Brown. In the background, he heard them again. Click-clack, moo. Click-clack, moo. Clickety-clack, moo. Now the cows and the hens have joined together. "Cows that type, hens on strike. Who ever heard of such a thing? How can I run a farm with no milk and no eggs?" Farmer Brown was furious. Farmer Brown got out his own typewriter. "Dear cows and hens, there will be no electric blankets. You are cows and hens, and I demand milk and eggs. Sincerely, Farmer Brown." Well, Duck was a neutral party, so he brought the ultimatum to the cows. The cows held an emergency meeting. All the animals gathered around the barn to snoop, but none of them could understand moo. All night long, Farmer Brown waited for an answer. I wonder what the answer will be. Duck knocked on the door early the next morning. He handed Farmer Brown a note, and the note says, "Dear Farmer Brown, we will exchange our typewriter for electric blankets. Leave them outside the barn door, and we will send Duck over with a typewriter. Sincerely, the cows." So the cows are making a deal with Farmer Brown. A typewriter for electric blankets. Well, Farmer Brown decided this was a good deal, so he left the blankets next to the barn door and waited for Duck to come with a typewriter. And you can see all the cows are covered with electric blankets, and so are the hens in the barn at night, and they're keeping warm. The next morning, Farmer Brown got a note. "Dear Farmer Brown, the pond is quite boring. We'd like a diving board. Sincerely, the ducks." Click, clack, quack. Click, clack, quack. Clickety, clack, quack. Well, apparently ducks can type too. And on the last page, there are not any words, but you can see what happened. You see a duck diving off the diving board. So apparently their protest paid off, and Farmer Brown got them a diving board for the pond. The end. Well, you know, it would have been so simple for those cows to just sit around and grumbled and complained about being cold at night and thinking there's nothing they can do. Farmer Brown owns this farm. He has all the power. We can't do anything about it. Well, I think what the cows learned was by themselves, they didn't have much power. But when they joined together and worked together and organized together, they had a lot of power. They had all the power because if the animals don't cooperate, the farm can't operate. So they realized their power by coming together as with one voice. I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about the election this week. It's in all the news, and that's what everyone is talking about. And this election has upset a lot of us. But one bright spot I see in this election is all the people who have gotten involved in the election this time. Unlike any other election I've ever seen in my life, people are energized and wanting change, and they realize that the way to get change is to get involved, because that's how we make change in a democracy. A lot of people in our church have gotten involved this time, making phone calls and sending texts and writing letters, encouraging people all over our state to get out and vote, because our vote is our voice in our government. Together, we can make change, but by ourselves, we don't have much power. You know, before you know it, it'll be your turn. Before you know it, you'll be old enough to vote. And that'll be your chance to share your voice, because your vote will be your voice. And we so desperately need to hear your voice, because my generation and generations before mine, well, we've made a mess of things. We're still not treating all people equally and fairly in this country. We're still not treating the planet with the care and concern that it needs to preserve it. We need you to get involved. We're looking to your generation to help us fix the problems that we've created. So when it comes your turn, I hope you'll pull out your keyboard and type click-clack, no, click-clack, no, clickety-clack, no. We will not settle for things when they're not right. We demand a change to make things right. Together, we really can change things. I'm putting my faith and my hope in you. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. It's good to see you, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. Take care.
Hello, my name is Michael Cohen, and I'm the worship associate for this morning's service. As is our custom at MLUC, one half of what we collect during our weekly offering goes to an offering outreach partner. And this month, our offering outreach partner is the Norristown Hospitality Center, or NHC. NHC is a home during the day for people who otherwise would be left hungry, weary, and living in the streets. They provide basic services and social services to empower those who experience homelessness and poverty. Some of these services include breakfast, a day of shelter, lockers, showers, mail and phone services, workforce development training, and social service referrals. If you would like to donate to this very worthy cause, please do so, and do so generously. And if you'd like to donate electronically, listen to the instructions that Rich Fritzen will provide to you right now. Thank you so much.
To contribute to the offering, click on the blue Contribute button below the video window. If you're not on our live stream page, you can click on the Give link at the top of any page on our website. Fill out the simple contribution form. You can choose to sign in or proceed as a guest. Or you can send a text message to 73256 with the message MLUC offering and the amount you would like to donate. You'll receive a link to this donation form. Thank you for your generosity.
It's been said that the Lord loves a cheerful giver, yet we'll accept contributions from a grouch as well. As we look into our wallets and our checkbooks to see how much we have, let us look into our hearts as well and see what's available there. How much love, how much generosity, how much gratitude, how much hope. And let us give our offering from that account. For all of your gifts, we give thanks.
This morning's reflective reading is a short one, but for me was very impactful. It's written by Mary Oliver. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your whole life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go.
The lighting of candles of community is our ritual of sharing personal joys and sorrows within the community of faith. After each candle is lit, please join me at home in saying, "We hold you in our hearts." We light a candle of condolence for Carol Hillman, whose mother, Marie Miller, passed away peacefully at her home with her family around her on October 12th. Carol, we hold you in our hearts. We light a candle of congratulations to Kit Burns, who is retiring after working for 26 years for Doorway's Villa Vacations, which arranges villa vacation rentals in Europe. Kit says that she will miss all her customers and villa owners in Italy, France, and Spain. Kit, we hold you in our hearts. We light a candle of celebration for Marshall Levine, who has self-published on Amazon his very amusing memoirs, The Complete Works of Marshall Levine. Marshall, we hold you in our hearts. We light a candle of joy for Joanne Wallen and Ken LeDunn, who will be grandparents, as their daughter Dara and daughter-in-law Meg are both expecting in March. Joanne and Ken, we hold you in our hearts. And for joys and sorrows too deep for words, we light a candle. Amen. Today's sermon is a follow-up to last Sunday's sermon, in which we talked about the experience of grief, our bodies and our psyche's normal, natural reaction to loss. The experience of loss may be universal, but each person's way of mourning is as unique as each person. Grief wears many faces. Numbness, which protects us until we're ready to face the loss. Sadness, which may slide into despair and depression. Emptiness and loneliness, which may isolate us from others. Worry over practical matters. Anxiety about being abandoned. Anger, a secondary emotion of fear, hurt, or frustration. And guilt, because whenever we lose someone dear to us, we can always think of things we wish we had said or done, or things we wish we had not said or done. But at some point, our season of grieving ends, and our season of rebuilding our lives begins. Now, I don't want to imply that grief heals in a linear process. I think most of us experience grief, as I said last week, as rolling over us in waves. On some days, the waves are calm and life seems to be getting back to normal. On other days, a wave of sadness or loneliness or regret can nearly drown us. Sometimes, years after a loss, a song or a photo can send you right back into the thick of your grief. Holidays and birthdays, even the changing of the seasons, can have the same effect. But with time, those waves come less frequently and we feel them less intensely. I think of that journey into healing as having certain mileposts along the way. One milepost is accepting the loss, which can be a lot more difficult than you might think. The acceptance of a loss, like a divorce or the death of a loved one, involves much more than the intellectual acknowledgement of what has happened. In our heads, we know that the person is gone, but it takes time for that awareness to seep down from our heads down into the marrow of our bones. My father died when I was in college, and for months and even years later, when I would come home, I kept expecting to see him sitting in his old upholstered chair. He was like Archie Bunker in that way. He had his favorite chair, and he wouldn't sit in any other chair. And nobody else in the family dared to sit in his chair. I remember one time the preacher came to visit, and not knowing our family chair rules, he sat in my father's chair before my father could get to it. My father looked so awkward sitting on the sofa. I don't think I'd ever seen him sitting in another chair in the house before. For the longest time after that, none of us dared to sit in his chair. It seemed almost sacrilegious. It can take a long time for a loss to sink in on the emotional level. And religious ceremonies can help. Now, sometimes a family will not want to bother with a memorial service, but I usually encourage them to reconsider. A memorial service helps us to accept the finality of a person's death in at least two ways. It gives the family and friends of the deceased the opportunity to mourn together and to say goodbye together. And it gives the opportunity to celebrate and give thanksgiving together for the life of that person and all that that life has meant to us. Now, unlike some traditional funerals, which tend to focus on the life hereafter, a UU memorial service focuses on the here and now. We focus on what we know instead of speculating on what we don't know. And what we do know is that whether that life was a scoundrel or a saint, it was a life. And life is always a gift worth celebrating. And its legacy is immeasurable, often not fully appreciated for years later. I like the way we UUs personalize our memorial services. Instead of the minister delivering a canned eulogy, we invite family and friends to share personal memories and reflections of the deceased, as we did last Sunday during the Zoom service for Mimi Collins. And I've noticed that other congregations and other denominations are picking up on this practice. These honest, often humorous recollections make the service authentic and rewarding. And thanks to these personal reflections, I've learned a lot about the deceased members of our church that I didn't know much about, like the fact that Mary Carl performed on stage with Placido Domingo, like that Russ Gall invented one of the first nylon tents, that Laura Lee Wolfson was born in Vienna, and that she came to America when her family fled the Nazis in the 1930s, that Nancy Wendell designed and painted theatrical sets for the Footlighters Theater in Berwyn, and that Mary Hune marched in a demonstration in Washington, D.C. to raise awareness of climate change when she was 92. Another milestone along the way of moving beyond mourning is transforming what was lost into a treasured memory. Now, this is not a matter of leaving the dead in the past, because once you love somebody and are loved by somebody, you never leave them, and they never leave you. I agree with William Faulkner. The past is never dead. It's not even past. The person is not dead. He or she becomes internalized as a living memory. And you and I can help a grieving person with this internalization by being present with them in their grief, allowing them to cry, allowing them to sit in silence, allowing them to reminisce, adding your own stories of the person. As I said last Sunday, many of us will avoid a grieving person because we don't know what to say, or we're afraid we'll say the wrong thing. During my 34 years as a minister, I've heard a lot of unhelpful things said to grieving persons, like, "It was God's will," or "She's in a better place now," or "God needed him in heaven more than you needed him here." These kind of statements are not only poor theology, in my opinion, but poor attempts at trying to comfort another person in pain. What such statements really represent are our attempts to comfort ourselves by saying something that might relieve our own feelings of awkwardness or helplessness. But I can't be judgmental about such responses because I've said some things in my own awkwardness that I wish I had not said. We UUs are not likely to make many of these God statements, but we do like to give our rational explanations. What we need to realize is that some things in life cannot be explained away. They simply have to be endured. What the grieving person needs, what they need most, is not our words, but our presence. They need us to listen to their expressions of pain and their stories about their loved ones. Our presence cannot undo the reality of their loss, but it can make their loss much more bearable. Chekhov wrote a poignant story simply entitled Grief, about an old taxi driver back in the days when taxis were horse-drawn carriages. The driver's son had died a few days earlier, and the lonely old father wants desperately to tell someone the story of his son's illness and death, and of the terrible loss he feels. He tries to tell a story to the passengers in his carriage, but they're not interested. They don't respond, or they cut him off by talking about something else. Chekhov writes, with an anxious and hurried look, he searches among the crowds passing on either side of the road to find if there's just one person who will listen to him. But the crowds hurry by without noticing him or his grief. Should his heart break and the grief pour out, it would flow over the whole earth, it seems. And yet, no one sees it. Well, the father finally gives up trying to tell his story to his passengers, so he ends his day early and goes to the stable hoping to find other taxi cab drivers who will listen. But they're all asleep. And so he goes out to feed his horse. And there, he pours out his soul to the only living creature that will listen. In our hyperactive, overstimulated, overcommitted lives, giving a person in mourning our presence so that they can be themselves and pour out their souls would be a real gift to that person. And it would be a gift that would help them internalize their loved one into a treasured memory. It would help them move beyond their mourning into a recovered and renewed life. During the Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther popularized the phrase, the priesthood of the believer. That phrase has both an individualistic and a communal meaning, but we've tended to emphasize only the individualistic implications. The priesthood of the believer means that each person can approach God directly without a priest as a mediator. But the priesthood of the believer also means that every member of the faith community, not just the ordained clergy, is a minister. All of us have the responsibility and the privilege of caring for those who are hurting. During my years as a minister, I've seen a lot of hurting people and a lot of caring people who have reached out to them. And I'm proud to say that this congregation has reached out compassionately to hurting people as well as any I have seen. I have seen so many of you reach out immediately following a loss by bringing over food, making phone calls on behalf of the grieving family, taking them to their doctor's appointments, doing their shopping, and so many other of the routine tasks that need to be done but can't be attended to by people who are numbed by their grief. And I've seen you reach out to them in the weeks and months following the memorial service or the divorce or the layoff from work by continuing to call and visit them and inviting them out. And I've been the recipient of the ministry of the priesthood of the believer. And I can't tell you how much it means to know that you don't have to face your loss alone. So remembering is part of the process of accepting the loss and letting it go. We don't let go of the lost person in the sense of forgetting them or ceasing to love them. We let go of our active interaction with the person in the present and internalize them as a cherished memory of a cherished relationship. Now, at first, remembering is painful, and we may resist remembering. But I would encourage you to do so anyway, because the sooner you can deal with your pain, the sooner it will subside, and the sooner you will recover. I recall the advice my grandfather Puckett gave me. He used to say, "Boy, if you've got to go through a horn, go through the small end first. It only gets easier after that." I think his advice is especially appropriate to facing a loss. I would encourage you to look at old photographs and to listen to old songs and to reminisce with others who knew him or her. Shedding your tears now will mean less tears later. Now, we typically idealize a person we lose to death, remembering only their good traits and our good times with them. I would encourage you to recollect the unpleasant things as well. None of us are perfect. We shall all leave behind a legacy of failures, mistakes, hurts, and selfishness, as well as a legacy of kindness, generosity, helpfulness, and selflessness. When you remember a person in his or her entirety, you're not being disloyal to them. You're being realistic. You're being faithful to that person as he or she really was. Now, when we lose a person through divorce or a ruptured friendship, the process of recollection typically proceeds in the opposite direction. We typically demonize the person, remembering only their irritating traits and the frustrating times. I would encourage you to recall the positive things about them as well. Holding on to grudges may make us feel justified and superior in the short run, but in the long run, we will not recover fully from our grief until we have appreciated the gifts that the person has given us. And there are always gifts given in any relationship. Finally, another milestone along the journey of recovery after a loss is reinvesting in life again. I think of grief as a kind of soul sickness that is similar to a physical illness. You know, when we recover from a physical illness, we step out of the stream of life. We take sick leave from work, spend time at the hospital, visit our doctor, take our medications, stay in bed, walk on crutches, engage in rehab. But when our souls are sick with grief, we step out of the stream of life for a while, but at some point, we are sufficiently recovered to begin stepping back into life. And this is a choice. It's not usually an easy choice, but we must choose to live again. Now, choosing to live again means that we choose a purpose for living. Unlike other animals, the human animal does not live by bread alone. We have to have a purpose for living. And that reason for living may be investing ourselves in our grandchildren and rekindling old friendships or making new relationships, investing in a job or volunteer work or this congregation, and travel, learning to dance, to play the guitar, or doing 1,000 other things that you've always wanted to do but have never made the time to do. If loss teaches us anything, it teaches us that our time is limited and that we should get on with our lives. Reinvesting in life means shifting your preoccupation from the past to the present and future. It means accepting what you miss and realizing what you don't miss. It means redefining your roles in your relationships. For instance, you may no longer be a couple, but a single person. It may mean some practical changes, like rearranging the furniture, or moving, or doing Thanksgiving and Christmas differently. It may mean learning to cook for the first time, or prepare your taxes for the first time, because he or she is no longer around to do that for you. When we step back into the stream of life, we will not do so as the same person we were before the loss. Grief has the power to transform us. After last week's sermon, one of you sent me a poem by Robert Browning Hamilton. I walked a mile with pleasure. She chatted all the way, but left me none the wiser for all she had to say. I walked a mile with sorrow, and ne'er a word she said, but oh, the things I learned from her when sorrow walked with me. Grief is often a door to spiritual growth. Now, as I say that, I do not mean to gloss over the tragedy of loss. The tragedy remains. Nor do I mean to suggest that we must suffer loss in order to grow. I do not believe that everything that happens for a reason, or that what happens to us occurs in order to teach us some kind of lesson. Sometimes a loss does not make us stronger or wiser. But this I do know. Often a loss can carve out a place in our heart that enables us to live with more depth and purpose. I have seen people who have suffered themselves have more sensitivity and compassion toward others who are suffering. I've seen people come through their grief with less pettiness and self-centeredness and demonstrate greater charity toward others and greater acceptance of others. I've seen people who've experienced loss who have a deeper appreciation for the gift of life. I suspect that people who have been enlarged by their grief have made a conscious decision to choose life. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross observed that the final stage of grief is acceptance. What does acceptance look like? It doesn't mean that you forget the person or thing that you've lost. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel hurt again. It means that you remember, but with less hurt and with more of a sense of peace. It means that you can feel joy and laugh again. Choosing to live is perhaps the best way we can honor someone we have lost. Amen. Please join me in singing, I Know I Can, and the words will be on your screen.
Though days be dark with storm and burdens weigh my heart, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on when sorrow heals my soul and burdens make me strong. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. And though the journey is long, the destination is near. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on.
Our benediction comes from Duncan Howlett. Life is worth the living. It is good and it is beautiful, in spite of the tragedy with which it is beset. We glory in life, undergirded by the faith that its goodness is pervasive, that it is part of the texture of life, that it is of the essence of the nature of things. This is a profound faith, this confidence in life, more profound than we perhaps suspect, because it stands upon faith and faith alone. There is no proof for it, no objective test to support it, except the living of life itself. But this is perhaps the best test of all. Amen. I want to thank our guest violinist, Dominique Salerni, for gracing our service today with his musical talent. And I want to thank you for joining us as well for the service. I hope you'll join us for our coffee hour following the service. You may do so by clicking on the Zoom link that's on the same webpage as access was to our worship service. I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion about the election. I plan to invite people to join me in a separate Zoom room to discuss today's sermon topic. In particular, I'd like to hear how you've been able to move past a significant loss in your life. I think by sharing those kinds of stories with each other that we can learn from each other. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay well, and stay kind.